When this was found, Jeremy McGowan went back to the UFO DAP and looked to see what was being imaged at the time of the 43 megaelectron volt per centimeter detection. And he found something.
Chris Lado, welcome to Lado Files. That was Kevin Knuth from UAP Expeditions. Very exciting video today. The initial preliminary scientific results from UAPx. This was presented June 5th, 2022 at the Scientific Coalition for Ufology Conference. Really, these results are the scientific results from the movie A Tear in the Sky. So A Tear in the Sky came out May 3rd. It's on many platforms, iTunes and Amazon. I recommend you pick it up and check it out. This is the scientific results from that movie. For me, the original movie, the Tear in the Sky movie, was difficult to kind of sit through. Okay, there's a lot of Hollywood things. William Shatner there at the beginning. It was difficult for me. But this, man, the scientific results, even though it was almost 3 hours long, I was glued to it. I reviewed it several times and picked out just some key points, key learning points. I recommend you go and watch the full briefing. But these initial preliminary scientific results from UAPx are very exciting. They list out many different things. I learned a ton on how to actually go and get data from their conclusions. They're very open-minded, very transparent. Thank you so much to UAPx, Gary Voorhees, Kevin Day, and the whole team right here. And let's get to the video. Thanks for being here.
And in fact, 45,000 miles an hour is about as fast as the New Horizons probe that we sent to Pluto is currently going. And that probe is leaving the solar system. So why would you assume that these are spacecraft? It's simple, because they move as fast as spacecraft do. I hope I don't have to say that slower for the people who haven't been following, but it's time for others to start playing catch up, unfortunately.
So Kevin Knuth basically opens the intro here explaining about UAPs, explaining the frustration that he obviously feels here, that it's just not taken seriously by the scientific community. And I think that's the biggest point, the biggest takeaway I had from this actual briefing is that UAPx, really they found that something is there. The phenomenon is there, okay? Is it provable as extraterrestrial? Probably not, but you'll see here there is something there. And that frustration shows through here. Kevin Knuth at the beginning saying, look guys, it's time to actually take this stuff seriously. Okay, next part was Matthew Sadagis, Dr. Matthew Sadagis. They're both doctors here, Kevin Knuth and Matthew Sadagis. I don't mean to use them first name. They're doctors. So next, Dr. Matthew Sadagis basically goes through and identifies their equipment, what this whole thing was about, the expedition. So this is our first expedition, July 2021, goals and purposes. Okay, so basically you had Gary Voorhees and Kevin Day, they're the original co-founders of UAPx, devised a plan to revisit an area off California near Catalina. This is with a team of civilian scientists, okay, with a team of civilian scientists. Why? Potential hotbed of Tic Tac activity, including USS Nimitz and USS Princeton. So that's basically the Nimitz engagement, the Tic Tac engagement. The Catalina Islands, San Clemente Island, that whole area has Tic Tacs apparently just flying around. Okay, a lot of weird things going on. Inspiration. How likely the pilot's eyes deceive them at the same time. Okay, so basically they're saying that let's go there, let's set up a bunch of systems and capture our own data, collect our own actionable data to prevent classification by the US government, right? Let's keep it open source, which is so awesome. Thanks to UAPx for doing that and posting this stuff. Overcome the usual problem. So they set up 3 teams, Laguna Beach, Catalina Island, and Mobile. That was Jeremy McGowan in his Osiris vehicle. So then Matthew relays the equipment they used. Okay, quite interesting here. They added the Cosmic Watch, and that's kind of the key piece of equipment that broke through for them, I think, and the UFO DAP. But let's check that out.
Data so the men in black or the men in khakis don't come taking them. Of course, we made a bajillion copies of this data. We wanted to collect our own actionable data, try to start figuring out what these things are. Is it ET? Is it foreign actors? Human? Is it mundane, prosaic? And overcome the problem of one blurry image in just one camera. So our goal was multiple cameras at different wavelengths of operation. We didn't always succeed in that goal. Some of the things we have were only caught by one camera, but remember, this was just our first attempt. We also brought electromagnetic equipment, as detailed later in this talk, because it's not just as simple as we'll look at different wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. You have to think out of a bigger box than that. And we had multiple teams. So we had, so Kevin and I were at a house in Laguna Beach where we deployed a lot of equipment on the roof. Then we had a team on Catalina Island, and then we had Jeremy McGowan in the Osiris. Details on that later in the talk. So he was mobile in his car. So what was our equipment? So we had 8 forward-looking infrared cameras. That's long-wave infrared, so similar to those used on U.S. fighter jets. These are from Washington State engineer David Mason. And then we have the UFO DAP visible light camera developed by Ronald Ulch. And so it's visible light, but it's partially infrared for night. So there's the link to UFO DAP website, Ron Ulch, highly recommend. And then we also had something that almost nobody ever has. So we also had radiation detection. So we had what's called the Cosmic Watch from MIT. Everyone was asking me, is that the Geiger count, like a Geiger counter? I say, this isn't 1950 anymore. Okay, Geiger counters. We have much better technology. Geiger counters that's for when you need radiation detection on a television show. Okay, this is 2022.
Okay, there's Matthew Sadagis. This is 2022, everybody. We got a cosmic watch. This ain't your grandma's Geiger counter. So they go through here. Basically, they had night vision, okay, with shortwave infrared. So they had basically, it sounds like just a little IR detector. And they also had that Mason's NVG. This was the long wave infrared. So much more effective, I think. UFO DAP, this is basically, it's a camera system that cues and basically will capture little clips. And that was in the Osiris vehicle. Okay, so you'll show that in a little bit later. And then MIT's Cosmic Watch. So this is basically detects radiation, detects all different types of radiation. Okay, so this is what they had set up here. I love it, right? So nerdy. Don't mistake this for cargo cult mentality. Science is analysis, not equipment. Okay, I can relay this for fighter pilot community, military, right? Everybody's like, why don't you have all these other pictures, all the other sensors? Really, all you need is one that works, okay? You need one. Bullets are very effective, okay? They're very effective. Simplicity is best, okay? But you need to capture all of the frequencies so you can see the different FLIRs here. Here's your night vision goggles. Look at all this. Looks like oscilloscopes. Cool stuff. Matthew relays basically their initial strategy, okay? UAPx, from what I could understand this briefing, has a 2-phase strategy. So the first phase is image processing, okay? You're capturing tons and tons of data. They're talking about 800, 900 gigabytes of data. They have 900 gig, I believe, of FLIR data. So just tons and tons of data out there to try and sift through, to try and deal with those. They're still working it out. So how did they do that? They had to break it down somehow, okay? So they have 2 things that I could tell. The UFO DAP. UFO DAP has its own technology, basically its own software overlay that we'll explain here in a second. They use this RGB, interestingly, and they have the Cosmic Watch. So good thing about Cosmic Watch is it's just simple numbers, right? It's either detecting radiation or it's not. It's either detecting particles or it's not, and it can tell you particles. So what they're able to do is match those 2 things up. So Matthew shows here, this is the Cosmic Watch data, okay? As you can see here, there's all these different types. It's much better than a Geiger counter. A Geiger counter just beep, detects something, right? But this tells you actually what kind of radiation it's detecting. So you can pick up alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, theta, okay? And basically, they're able to track what type of radiation is coming through. But there's many types of radiation all the time. From the solar wind, right? Just from the sun, you're gonna have all different types of radiation, plus natural radiation, man-made radiation, etc. So they have to weed these out. So what you see here is these are all the events. They went through and said, okay, this was also a time of solar activity. So cosmic activity, if it's in bold now, it is an event, okay? An event that doesn't relate to something else like cosmic activity. So basically they were able to look at the Cosmic Watch data and say, hey, is there anything anomalous in here, and compare it to the UFO DAP? And they found an instance, at least one instance, where it was. So Dr. Sadagis relays basically how they do that. Essentially, they found with the color profile. Okay, very interesting here for the first phase of the UFO DAP. Okay, remember this is a A car that drives around has cameras constantly recording, but once in a while it wants to record key clips. It records key clips. It has machine learning on top of it. So how does that machine learning work? What I learned from this brief is that it's able to discover real objects. Okay, real objects have a large standard deviation between the 3 RGB values. Okay, so basically real objects are going to have a certain color profile. We saw this was similar into what the astronomers were using in Ukraine for the actual UFO captures over Ukraine. So these RGB values, they were able to find using UFO depth imaging that it was different. So if it's a real object, it will have a different color profile. Okay, it would have a different standard deviation between these things. So you can determine if it's just an artifact in the lens or an artifact in the camera because it doesn't follow the same correct color profile. Very interesting. Okay, so they use that if an RGB event triggers in the frame. Now the UFO DAP will start recording and it'll pick up a visual recording. They combine that with a very interesting cosmic watch reading, and they got what they call the tear in the sky.
Glitch or noise or not. As you see, there's still overlap, of course, so it's not perfect. So there's overlap between the red and the blue distributions at very low levels of standard deviation of the 3 RGB numbers. But you have this really long tail where the vast majority of the blue is events that we know are real. How do we know they're real? By combining human eye hand scan together with iterations of this software, early versions of it, double checking each other, not trusting a human or a computer, but rather together to try to test on a couple hours of sample data whether the software is working before you trust to deploy it on the other few hundred hours.
So using this software technique, they're able to bound the events, okay? And they're actually able to figure out events that are real and events that are fake. And so focus on events that are real using a subtractive method that Dr. Sadagis talks about in this briefing. So again, check out this briefing. I can't go into so much detail, but very interesting. They go into specific detail, very transparent on how they're doing it. Thanks so much, you guys. And really that's combining machine learning over this optical camera tracking system and then cross-checking it with other sensors. And this brings to the most interesting events that UAPx captured on their Tear in the Sky documentary. So not in chronological order. They only picked 2, okay? This is a 2-hour briefing. They can only cover these top 2, okay? But there is 4. So the first one I just mentioned, a potentially didn't have direction with the Cosmic Watch, radioactive atmospheric ambiguity. So that is from the Cosmic Watch. They detected 43 mega electron volts. This is our number 1 item in terms of interest, okay? Because they detected that atmospheric ambiguity and then they looked at the UFO DAP and they had a video of a hole in the clouds, okay? A hole in the clouds. The second one's a slow-moving, monotonically glowing sphere, potentially captured from multiple angles using multiple sensor modalities. This is looks like an orb capture from different cameras. So that's really the second capture they cover in this briefing. Okay, what they don't cover in this briefing is 2 other events. Objects raining from the sky into the ocean. I'm assuming this is on FLIR. Okay, heating it up because it did not look like the other known FLIR camera glitches. Okay, so another anomaly there. And also transient lights in the sky on the island and in the ocean. So transient lights in the ocean and the sky. They mentioned conclusions how they can better capture this next time. These are in rough order of importance, not chronological.
This, at least we can get the data. So by itself, this is not necessarily remarkable because, as I stressed earlier, naturally occurring cosmic rays go orders of magnitude higher than energy in this by billions and trillions. But nevertheless, in the local time frame, you see on the left that this was, for the local time frame, this was a pretty high energy event that was recorded at 4:01 a.m. local time on July 16th. So it's definitely worth checking whether the other instruments saw something. So our estimates, we're still finalizing things like the systematic error on this. How unusual was this? So our current best estimate is that we should have seen at how many events of this energy during 1 week of data taking at that location, at that altitude and latitude. It's a 2 plus or minus 2. So for those of you who understand statistics, that means 0 or 1 would have been extremely normal. So by itself, this is not yet unusual. But what this means is let's check the other sensors to see, was there something strange at the moment that that high energy particle hits. And it's only one particle. This is not an increase in the rate of radiation. This was a one-off thing. There is something slightly higher in energy earlier, though, so if you look at the full timeline, this does seem to start looking like an interesting event cluster.
Okay, so this is that 43 mega electron volt interaction, muon or gamma, they're not sure. And this is the a little bit larger particle earlier, okay? And he mentions you should get about 0 to 4 hits a week on this sensor. Okay, based on statistic analysis that he mentions. Okay, so it's not unique, but it is kind of rare. Okay, but you should get some of these hits every week.
That'll really help us go through the 900 hours of FLIR video. And as Matthew explained, first used this cosmic watch data looking for anomalous particle detections to see if we picked up anything on our other sensors. So when this was found, Jeremy McGowan went back to the UFO DAP and looked to see what was being imaged at the time of the 43 megaelectron volt per centimeter detection. And he found something which was rather interesting. So I'm going to first show what he found, and then I'm going to show a video from slightly before that. So let me escape from here. So this is the video that correlates with the time of these particle detections. So first we had the 23 megaelectron volt, is that correct, particle detection, followed by the 43 megaelectron volt. Still framed from the video. And what you can see here is this is looking out toward Catalina Island. The island's off this way. It's foggy. You can see the lights here. These lights are from the city of Avalon in the harbor. There are lights down here underneath this text that's written on top of the image. We have images without text as well. These lights are from boats in the channel. This here is a reflection on the camera, and we have this ambiguous black spot up in the clouds. So this is what the UFO DAP triggered on at this point in time. And it's not clear exactly what this black spot is. And so this is one of the things we're looking at. I wouldn't necessarily call this anomalous at this point. It's ambiguous. We don't know exactly what's going on. And the first job is to try to rule out other possibilities. So I'll show you what another trigger looks like. This is from slightly before, same day. This is from 7 minutes before. Do that, and there it is. The UFO DAP triggers on this bug. I'm going to start it over, and you'll see this bug zipping around in front. It's not a fast walker, sorry. It's a bug. And triggers and then kind of loops around. The bug actually comes into the scene again, and it keeps triggering and moving. So this is how the UFO DAP system works. And you can see there's no dark spot in the sky if we were to go back through that carefully. So 7 minutes later, you've got this ambiguous dark spot in the sky. So it's just a dark spot in the sky. Is it on the camera? It's not clear. I'm going to go then to the next video, which was taken not much longer after. This one I'm going to go frame by frame. I think I'll play it first and then go frame by frame. So I pulled all the frames last night. Those of you who was wondering what I was doing while we were eating pizza, that's what I did. So there's the hole in the sky with the bug, and it triggers and moves. So What's a little disturbing is how the hole behaves when the camera moves. At first, the hole doesn't seem to move with the camera. And I'll show you what this looks like frame by frame. So here comes the bug on the left. You can see the dark spot in the sky here or on the camera. And as the camera starts to move, let me back it up a little bit. The camera is going to start moving now. It starts to move, and first thing that happens is the hole doesn't move as much as the lights from the boats do. And in addition, we get these white spots here, which we do see later. We see something like that later. But we also see these dark spots, which seem to be some type of residual effect from maybe from white spots there. So it's not clear what's going on.
So this is basically the hole in the sky, the tear in the sky. So correlating with a high hit, 43 mega electron volts from the cosmic watch, so the same time, and it cued off on a bug. If you notice that, so a bug set off the UFO DAP, so the camera system actually start recording. So it picked up this frame, and as it's scanning across the screen, so searching around the horizon, it picks up this hole, okay? And as you saw there, Dr. Knuth was basically showing that the hole was not there 7 minutes before. So there was a clip, another UFO DAP clip 7 minutes before that did not show this basic hole in the sky. And now it's there. The other thing Dr. Knuth talks about is these little dots. So basically these look like bright points. Looks like scintillation almost. And so he does do some statistical analysis on could all of these be in the same location. You know, statistically it can't happen. Okay, so it's not an artifact that he can tell of the camera system. Could it be a bunch of seagulls? Basically, a flock of birds in there. So that's what they're trying to rule out, and it seems like he does rule out most of it.
But it's suggestive that this is some kind of artifact. And the hole is still rather much in place and then kind of disappears as the camera pans. And then things again settle down. You do see other dots appearing every now and again. There's one here and here, and these are probably artifact. But all of these camera behaviors have to be studied very carefully to figure out exactly what's going on.
So again, preliminary results. That was the first actual event. So let's move on to the second event.
Because even though cameras flash invisible, some of that flash does bleed over a little bit into the infrared. So the dot you see here is flashing. So this flasher, this is an airplane, and we can check FAA records, and we know that that's an airplane. It's so yeah. See, there you go. Flash. You see how it's winking? So that's an airplane. There, that's a big flash right there. See, airplane. All right, so we have plenty of examples of that. That's what makes science part of one of the things that makes science science. Is before you claim anything, you need to have control. You need to have background. You need to have, in medical studies, it's the equivalent of the placebo group. You have to have control. So we have plenty of examples of things like that. So what happened on Wednesday, July 14th? So if you've watched the movie A Tear in the Sky, first thing I have to explain, though, is it looks like the radiation detectors appear to start clicking more often than normal. However, in retrospect, this aspect may have been a phenomenon called pareidolia, which is where you see a pattern where there isn't none. So unlike the first event we told you about, this one is not associated with any interesting radiation. This one is a more traditional UFO event that's going to be very visual. So there are, nevertheless, even though it turned out not to be associated with radiation, this is an extremely important event. Many prominent scenes in Carolyn Corey's movie A Tear in the Sky, and rightfully so.
Okay, so the second event was Wednesday, July 14th. That was a phone call from Island Team is how it all started. UAPx team members Michael Hall and Dave Altman started tracking a fuzzy, glowing spheroid. So not blinking like an airplane like Sadagis just showed, appeared to change direction. So not a satellite or ISS or a meteor. So very interesting. They did see plenty of planes. So the radiation detectors appeared to start clicking more often. However, this is where Dr. Sadagis, he was talking about, in retrospect, this appears to be pareidolia. Must be skeptical at all times. But despite the clouds, they still caught something.
I'll tell you what they're saying. Look, look at that. I'm following. So what's really great is because we have two videos, you can do very precise time stamping even without the metadata. We have, of course, the metadata on both their videos, but Dave Altman and Michael Hall, you can hear their conversations in these two videos. You can hear them say, "I got it too." And then that helps you figure out that and so you see our fuzzy glowing, our fuzzy glowing orb. By itself, this is not remarkable. By itself, this convinces no one. It's another fuzzy UFO video, except for the fact we got it in two different cameras, two night vision, and then we have that's not an airplane. I just showed you what an airplane looks like in the night vision. It flashes. Why? Because you have the FAA required navigation lights. It's not flashing. Okay, this is not an airplane. It could still end up being something prosaic, definitely, but it's not your knee jerk. It's a meteor or an airplane. It's not one of those knee jerk debunkings. It's going to take some time. So they tracked it as long as they could. It eventually disappeared into the clouds. So I'm going to keep playing that for the total. So just like we're doing with all the other videos, we're going to break this up frame by frame. It's going to be more difficult to do the analysis we were talking about earlier, like with CTAP, because this was not a stationary camera. So this was them holding it, right? So we're going to have to work around the fact that, of course, it was a shaky cam. But this is still outstanding data that our team members took. So let's look at the other video. As I said, one of these was David Altman, one of these was Michael Hall. And they caught the same. They started following the same object. There it is again. So they were close to each other. So this is not, people ask, is it good for a triangulation to get size and distance? Not right off the bat. That's difficult because even though they're two different people, they're only a few feet apart, right next to each other on the island, and so that we need more angles to be able to do that. So I'll talk about in a moment how we scrambled. I know it's a car, not a jet, but we scrambled Jeremy in the Osiris to try to get a different angle from many miles away on the object to help with triangulation to determine size, shape, velocity more robustly. So because you can't do triangulation even if you have multiple viewpoints if those viewpoints are too close together. You need some spread also. So this wasn't good enough yet for size, shape analysis, but you can see fuzzy, traditional UFO here, fuzzy orb, moving around, and caught by two of our team members in their night vision goggles. Very, very, very interesting. And now this is it in visible light. And you can barely see it probably on this screen, but it's an orangish fuzz, and you can see it moving around. So again, do we wish we had higher resolution of this? Of course. And that's why, we're going to have even better, but remember, this was a movie camera. This is high quality camera, okay? So we're going to break this down frame by frame, zoom and continue this analysis. But right now, this is what we have in hand right now, but obviously analysis is not finished. So much more to do.
So that was the orb capture by UAPx in the Catalina Islands. So very strong. That's what I love, man. Multiple angles. Multiple angles is huge. So you look right there. It's not a bug just because you have two cameras right next to each other. Okay, they weren't far enough away from each other, okay, to actually discern triangulation, to really figure out how far away this thing is. I think they can figure it out, at least to get some general idea of how big this thing is, how fast it's going. And now you can really nail down speeds. You can really nail down maneuvers, and now we can really start to actually get some valid data on this. Very exciting. And let's go to lessons learned. Okay, like I said, this is a 2-hour, 40-minute presentation. So Matthew Sadagas here goes through tons of data. He shows here their actual FLIR video images. So you can see he goes through, they actually did capture some things on the FLIR, and they're actually improving that. So he shows they have a new actual FLIR, more advanced, smaller, better. So the actual IR optics are getting much better very quickly. Chris Altman, he says that satellite data was missing. So Chris Altman, he's a trained astronaut. He's actually also on the team. He was giving the briefing remotely. He says that this whole area of space where they were looking for actual satellite data is literally missing. So he says this is not normal. Public satellite data is missing for this whole area which seems just so sketchy to me, right? Just seems so sketchy. That was from Chris Altman. He also explains a quantum generator. So Chris Altman explains a new quantum random generator. This is called, uses a Zener diode. He says it's not pseudo-random like software, but truly random. This can provide some extra level of randomness. That was exciting. So he said they did get data on that, but results will have to come later down the field. And this is that Osiris vehicle using UFO DAP, from what I understand. Jerry McGowan running around, he was able to capture some videos as well using the UFO DAP. So interesting. These are the lessons learned. So again, very long briefing. I can't go through all of it. It's 2 hours, 40 minutes and just packed with data. Like I said, I was glued to it, much more so than the actual Hollywood movie. This is interesting stuff. So Matthew Sidagis, what does he talk about here? Where do we go from here? Lessons learned. I was very happy to see this, okay, as working on our own. Okay, there's so many efforts out there to try and get the information that there's issues. Okay, so look at this. So he says, first is move about more cautiously within Hollywood. So they still need to pay the bills. This stuff is expensive. Okay, everyone talks about funding. Why? Because where do you get money to actually do stuff, to live? Okay, like he mentions, they all mention they actually have day jobs and they do this on the side. So thanks to all these guys. But they still need to pay the bills. But we will be adding the caveat of fly on the wall style filming. So it sounds like they felt like they were imposed upon. Must better synchronize our clocks. We had 1 minute resolution, needs sub-second. Yeah, 1 minute does not seem good enough. My own idea is to just video a clock at least, and then you can pair it in editing. But best would obviously be to just have time data on the display. If you can do that, that would be perfect. Must record the exact angles and positions of all cameras. This is quite interesting as well. So he gets into the tediousness, the boringness of actual science. Like real science is super, super, super boring. That's why I got a science degree from college, and then it was just so incredibly boring. I could not imagine myself actually doing that for years. So I just kudos to all these guys for going and taking the time. And it does take effort to rule out everything. This next lesson learned: UFO community is extremely toxic with massive egos, even scientists. Of course, even scientists. All people and scientists are hardworking, dedicated professionals. Guess what happens? You're going to have huge, professionally dedicated egos, wanting to be the first to win the Nobel Prize for finding out what UFOs are. The dark matter field is similar. I think this is every field, okay? We're all in it to win it. It is hard to collaborate. It's hard to share. And so thanks to UAPx for doing that, man, for sharing. Okay, so they need continuous video monitoring in the visible spectrum, not just IR coupled. So UFO DAP had short clips, pre and post trigger. So continuous video monitoring. This is like that Sky 360. Can we get continuous video monitoring, at least in these little expeditions, and then apply the post-analysis processing? Okay, is there a way to get continuous? Basically just to get more data that they can use. And then more equipment, magnetometers, trifield meters, compasses. So magnetometers, that was interesting. You mentioned this. I haven't considered that, but that's a great point. Also, this is gravitational wave, high-frequency gravitational waves. Hard. Look at the size of LIGO. Can you get a gravitational wave detector? Interesting. Okay, and then their future work. So they have a bunch of equipment. They have better UV advanced equipment that he mentioned. Try and integrate that. Directional radiation detection. That's that cosmic watch. Can you actually use the cosmic watch to say, hey, it came from that tear in the sky direction, right? It actually came from that, because we don't know actually where that particle came from. You know, if it was coming from behind the actual sensor instead of towards the tear in the sky direction, towards that hole, then you know it's not correlated, right? So it's easy to correlate. Directional control seems huge. Druid and Druid Light sensor platforms. Not sure what that is. Spectroscopy. He said, can we actually determine the elements? So this is how we do for exoplanets, etc. You can determine the actual element. He said you can do this for materials. So actually figuring out, using, I believe, the cosmic watch to actually use it as some sort of spectrometer, essentially determine what is the material made out of. And then passive radar system. This, I've heard about this. Science Bob McGuire has also talked about this, integrating into Sky 360. Very interesting. But most importantly, have skeptical but open-minded peers review UAPx's papers that they put out. Okay, last slide here from UAPx. They are not standing there to tell you that they found the definitive proof of an alien craft. Okay, they did not find a smoking gun, but instead intriguing and strange bits and pieces. Okay, this is probably the most important point, right? The Kevin Canute, that frustration at the beginning of the briefing. What they did demonstrate is the phenomenon appears to be real and interesting. It is worthy of scientific study, worthy of the attention of PhDs, and perhaps is not even that rare because we couldn't have been that lucky. So amazing stuff here, amazing brief from UAPx. Thank you so much to SCU, the Scientific Coalition of Ufology, Richard Hoffman, as well as UAPx, putting out all this information open source. I know it's difficult to share, but it helps all of us that are looking into this, and will certainly help my own efforts and UAP Society's own efforts to figure all this stuff out. So much more in this video I couldn't begin to cover, so go check it out. Give them some support. Support UAPx, donate to those guys, and then like and subscribe this video, UAP Society as well. You can get backstage access, behind the scenes exclusive content at Patreon, as well as ad-free access to all these videos by going to patreon.com. Clicking that little button, it's only $5 a month. Exclusive videos, tons of content, and you keep this channel going. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Peace.